it's so good to have a friend here
Yeah.
and to hang out. I haven't seen you in a little while. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic today.
Awesome.
Thank you for asking.
Of course.
Yeah.
You were just awarded the Longevity Doctor of the Year by the renowned Longevity Doctors Association. There's nobody better to ask this question to. What does longevity actually mean?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. The word longevity has been over marketed now and it's become like a buzzword. And I feel that the term is like losing its significance a little bit. So I'm trying to bring the focus of the conversation back into what really is longevity. And what I mean by that is, it's not biohacking, right? It's not adding a bunch of years to your life that are non-productive. But what it is to me is really, how do we add health span into our years, right? And that's how you get years out of your life, is adding more productive years where you still have your brain and your ability to recognize friends and family, where you still have the ability to move. Maybe you like traveling, golfing, whatever it is. You can still do that, right? Where you don't have added risk to your life as well. Risk of falling, right? Because you've lost your balance. Added risk of maybe cancer, maybe all the chronic diseases, heart attack. How do you remove all those risks that we take for granted right now, that it's just going to happen to us, right? Like we think, I'll probably die of a heart attack because that's what most people die of. And the reality situation is you don't have to die of a heart attack. We have the technology now and the tools now to prevent you from dying of a heart attack, Alzheimer's disease, cancer, metabolic disease, all the things that are killing most of us right now. And so to me, bringing along the conversation back to what is really longevity. And to me, that is adding health span into our years and removing the risk of dying from something that we just take it for granted that this is what we're going to die of.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is one of the most Captain Obvious things, but not so much now, because it's so focused on all the other stuff to do.
Yeah.
A big part of this is not dying from the stuff that's preventable.
Right.
The most largely, the biggest killers in our world today, as you just mentioned, heart disease, cancer, diabetes is affecting all these other conditions. Exactly. Obesity has exploded.
Right.
And so helping to prevent these issues, yes, but I don't think that we understand. And if you could, since I have you here, what is the current state of affair when we're talking about these chronic conditions? Is this now the norm? Are most people just kind of expecting, you just said it, like expecting to have a heart attack because of the current state of affairs? Is the average person just going to have these diseases?
So we are at a really interesting point in human history right now where we're actually reversing the trend of chronic disease, okay? So we have been increasing exponentially the number of people that are being diagnosed with a chronic disease over the last 50 years. But I really believe at this moment in 2025 that we've got to a point where we can reverse this trend now, okay? And so we actually are seeing statistically less people being dying of heart attacks, for example. And the nice thing about that is I feel that we're going to get to an accelerated reduction of chronic disease at this moment in time. So we're living in a really exciting time period. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think there's good technology out that we're using sooner and is becoming cheaper, but also the mindset of just people has changed since COVID, right? I think there's a lot more conversation around health. Dr. Mark Hyman says all the time, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and people now have access to information that they never had access to before. And so I feel really optimistic that you and I were talking about, a kid born today, right? What is their life going to be like in 50, 60 years? I think chronic disease will not be something that they're necessarily worried about the way we worry about it today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question, and I want to steer this towards, you've mentioned technology a couple of times. What are some of the things that you are utilizing in your practice, that you're studying, that you're considering when it comes to longevity? And also some of the things that you are already, you've been utilizing for quite some time. And I've had the experience of having, actually going with my wife to Next Health and having these incredible experiences, like top to bottom, the red light therapy, the hyperbaric oxygen, the cryotherapy. You got every
All the
IV
cool toys
that you can name, but to do this with my friend, my wife, my best friend. And what I saw was that a lot of people were coming with a buddy or their significant other and like hanging out and doing all the things.
Yeah.
So what are some of these technologies that are really supportive of longevity that you're into right now?
Right. So what I would say is, maybe I can take it a step back a little bit. Just once again, let's talk about the definition of longevity again. So being a doctor, like, I always use medical terminology a little bit more, but when I was going through medical school, we talked about different types of medicine that were been kind of ignored in the Western medicine world of sick care, right? And so when I look at the longevity conversation, I divide it into 4 verticals. Vertical number 1 is lifestyle medicine. Okay. So this is something that doctors are told to practice, but they're not given any education on how to really practice lifestyle medicine well. And you talk a lot about this. I probably learned more from your podcast about lifestyle medicine than I did in medical school, to be honest with you. Sleep, exercise, nutrition, right? And avoidance of metabolic health problems. Okay. So if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't get good nutrition, and if you don't have good movement in your life, you're going to be metabolically unhealthy. Right. So one of the best pieces of technology in that vertical is a continuous glucose monitor, in my mind. All right. And we can talk about that more a little bit later. Second vertical is functional medicine. So functional medicine, again, is also ignored by sick care Western medicine because it is root cause medicine. It prevents chronic disease. So when you look at the root causes of why people are unhealthy, things like, gut health, detoxifying their lifestyle, hormonal health. This all falls into the realm of functional medicine. Stuff that, in traditional medicine, you don't really talk about a lot. Like, when was the last time you talked to your primary care doctor about your gut health, right? They send you to a gastroenterologist. But we have incredible tools and technology in that vertical now as well. We have hormone replacement therapy. We have the ability to measure your hormones and to do something about it even without hormone replacement therapy. Same with gut health. We can look at your gut health, and we have great techniques now to restore your gut balance. Third vertical then is preventative medicine, okay? And preventative medicine is, how do we prevent you from dying of a heart attack, Alzheimer's disease, or cancer? Incredible technology there. And the truth of that vertical is that we've had this technology for a while. We just used it way too late. So it's always like too little or too much too late is the way we practice Western medicine right now. If we can bring some of that technology into prevention, we can prevent all the chronic diseases. And then lastly, I talk about longevity medicine. And that is where we have also incredible new technology, regenerative medicine techniques like stem cells, exosomes, peptides. We have also some of the biohacking stuff like you talked about, like hyperbaric oxygen therapy, LED light therapy. And these have science behind them. The only thing I will say about longevity medicine is that if you don't have those first 3 verticals addressed and perfected, the stuff in the longevity medicine vertical is not going to be as effective, or it just simply won't work, And so you have to kind of take it in that order, right? And this is the practice. This is how we practice medicine now in Nexel. This is our entire kind of longevity medicine practice and how we do things. And that's the structure that we have around it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because we have colleagues that get obsessed with that 4th pillar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just like they're looking for that thing and completely missing the ball. Like, this is going to be radically ineffective if you're not doing these other things. We're just going to be trying to cancel out all the other problems.
Right.
Essentially trying to. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for that, man. Yeah. So
no problem. Now I was going to say, the human body is a biological mechanism that's always affected by the inputs that you're putting into it, right? And so if you're doing all these biohacking things, but you haven't fixed the inputs, you're just chasing your tail constantly, right? And the inputs are 100 times more consequential than doing some of these biohacks, right? So, and the inputs are diet, toxins, movement, all of these things are inputs. And you got to fix your inputs before you do any of these biohacking technologies. And look, I'm not saying they don't work. Obviously, we have them in Nexel, they work. But I don't want anyone getting into a hyperbaric chamber until they've talked to me about all this other stuff first.
I love it. I love it. So since I have you here, I want to ask you about some of these emerging supplements and things that people are
Yeah.
implementing. I get a lot of questions about these kind of things, and to have you here again is very special. But
Thank you.
NAD
Yeah.
is one of those things that a lot of people are interested in talking about. And I'm asking this specifically because I was leaving the gym just yesterday and a guy stopped me who sees me all the time. He's like, I saw you, you popped up on my feed. He's like, I didn't know you were one of those guys. And so he just starts asking me all these health questions.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that, he was utilizing NAD. And so first of all, what is NAD and what are the best practices and, who is this implicated for?
Great question. Okay, so NAD is a molecule that without it, we would be dead, basically, because it's a precursor for energy being made in our mitochondria at the cellular level. Obviously, every cell in our body needs energy to perform its function. And if you don't have enough energy, the function of that cell is not optimal, right? So having enough energy is the key to life. And we figured out how to give people that precursor, either in oral or IV form. And there's different ways of getting this precursor, but as long as it gets inside the cell as NAD, your mitochondria can turn that into ATP, which is energy. So obviously, we all want as much energy as possible, right? And this is not just energy like I feel energetic today. It's the energy for your liver to detoxify. It's the energy for your brain to keep you moving, all of it. And so you can take NAD in the form of either NAD, NMN, or nicotinamide riboside, NR, which goes by the trade name of Niagen. So those are the three forms of NAD that you can take. What a lot of people notice when they take NAD is they have more energy. And specifically, like in low energy states, like after traveling or after you've been sick, it can get you better much more quickly, right? So those are the kind of people that use NAD. I also like to use NAD on a daily basis, and so I use it orally. What I've found is that Niagen or NR is the form of NAD that is absorbed the best into the cell, and this is why that's the product that I use. There's also IV versions of NAD. IV NAD, if you've ever had it before, it's very uncomfortable because when you give IV NAD, your immune system has a reaction to it because NAD is supposed to be inside your cell, not outside your cell, floating around in your bloodstream. So people get chest pain, people get a feeling of nausea when they're taking it. IVNR, Niagen, again, is absorbed incredibly rapidly into the cell. And so you don't feel as bad as you do with IV NAD. And because it's absorbed more rapidly, it actually has a better intercellular concentration as well. So that's like the big picture on NAD. Now, there is NMN as well, you've probably heard of, right? And there's a lot of research going around about that as well. Unfortunately, the FDA took it off the market because they're going to consider it as a drug, actually. And so a lot more research needs to be done for NMN to come back into the market. Some people are getting it in supplement form, but and I think there's great research around NMN as well, but it's just harder to get.
So you mentioned a nicotinamide version, which got me thinking about this category of nicotine.
Yeah.
Right. And so now this is kind of having an emergence in the longevity space in particular, but also around cognitive function.
Yep.
But when I think about nicotine, I think about ciggies. I think about smoking. So what's going on there? Is nicotine something that's dangerous for humans? Do you think that this is a potential benefit? Talk about that one for me.
Yeah, I mean, I actually use nicotine sometimes, and I use it in the form of an absorbable pouch that you can put inside your mouth, right? And nicotine, we know, is a cognitive and performance enhancer. And I use it sometimes before I do a podcast, to be honest with you. And I like it for that. Nicotine in cigarettes, however, obviously the cigarette has a lot of respiratory consequences, causes cancer. So you don't want to you don't want to smoke it. But the problem with nicotine is for some people, it can be extremely addictive, right? And so that's why people get addicted to cigarettes, right? And so if you are one of these people that get addicted to nicotine, you probably want to reduce your consumption of it. However, if you're one of these people that can manage your intake and you can use it for cognitive enhancement, a lot of athletes are using nicotine as well. The form that I use is called athletic nicotine, and I love it for cognitive enhancement and performance enhancement.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So there are any other, because again, we tie that so closely to smoking. Are there any other like negative implications if you're utilizing even, a nicotine supplement?
I mean, I think the main thing is the addiction of it, and so other than that, if you can, the dose is always the poison, right? If you can control your dosage, you're using it for specific situations, I think that it can be valuable, but obviously overdosing and getting addicted to it is going to be a problem.
Got it. Well, going back to one of the hallmarks of longevity, which is not dying, not dying from things, especially things that are preventable, largely preventable. And the number one cause of death here in the United States and also worldwide, but we're the kings of it, is heart disease. Yeah. You've got some information about potentially being able to detect heart attacks decades before they happen.
Absolutely.
Talk about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, once again, we're living in a really exciting time right now that we can look at the arteries of your heart with a CAT scan and use AI to lay out every artery and see exactly how much plaque you have and where it's at, right? And so for decades, all we did was follow cholesterol levels because we're looking at that as a risk factor, right? We're looking at your risk factors and we're saying how at risk are you of heart attack, right? But now we can see with incredible clarity with a non-invasive scan what's going on with your heart. And this is called the Clearly scan. And this is a game changer for cardiology because if you can do a Clearly scan early enough and detect plaque enough, you know how aggressive you need to be with mitigating all of the risk factors for heart disease. The risk factors for heart disease are not just high cholesterol. They're also inflammation. They're also metabolic disease. They're also heart hypertension, high blood pressure. You have to work on all of those to reduce your risk of heart disease, not just your cholesterol level. But prior, all we had was, blood pressure and cholesterol. So we would throw medications at it. I could tell you, I have patients that have total cholesterols that are really high, like 250, and they have zero plaque on their Clearly. And I can tell you, I have patients with low cholesterol levels, and they have a lot of plaque in their arteries. And there's reasons for that, right? And so now with the ability to see with the scan beautifully what these arteries are doing, you can totally prevent yourself from having a heart attack.
So one of my biggest concerns over the years, again, really being acclimated to the research around cholesterol, again, for years, and looking at this number without context has been the habitual problem. And people coming into my office, I was working as a nutritionist for many years, and they're like, I've got this, my cholesterol's high, I'm on the statin, But I'm just like, there's so much more here to this. There's a picture here that your blood work will be telling if you're more educated on the blood work. And unfortunately, a lot of physicians are not educated on that connection because you just said that somebody could have a high cholesterol number, but not have these plaques showing up to that extreme degree, but their cholesterol could be lower, other people, and have higher amounts of plaque. There's other factors involved here that can make cholesterol dangerous. Let's talk about that. Yeah, sure. So the reason people get plaque is three reasons, and cholesterol is the last reason, actually. The first reason is there's some damage to the wall of the artery, okay? This is called the endothelium, and there's another layer called the glycocalyx. Once this gets damaged, it starts to allow cholesterol into the artery wall, okay? The reason you can damage the blood vessel is by overtraining, high blood pressure, a lot of stress can do it, metabolic health issues can do it. All of these are damaging to the inside of your blood vessel. So step one is don't damage the inside of your blood vessel, right? Step two then is cholesterol enters the blood vessel, and this causes the plaque that we talk about, because once cholesterol enters in there, your body realizes that it's not supposed to be there, and it sets off a cascade with your immune system called inflammation, right? So it's a combination of all of these factors that work together to create
the plaque inside the artery wall. And why is plaque bad? Well, because your arteries are tiny. I used to do heart surgery and I used to operate on these arteries and bypass them on people. They're tiny. They're like, you have to use a microscope to sew into them, right? So a little bit of cholesterol accumulating in there can block that artery. But what can also happen, and this is why, 50% of all heart attacks are 50% of heart disease is diagnosed as someone's first heart attack, right? And that's because sometimes when you get cholesterol in the artery wall, you can also get a clot forming in that artery as well. And this kind of plaque is very dangerous plaque. And typically, we've never had any way to see if you have this dangerous plaque or not, unless you got an angiogram, which is a very invasive test. So this clearly test, once again, shows you with even better clarity than an angiogram if you have some of this dangerous plaque as well, which makes it more urgent that you do something about it. Yeah. So, there's lots of reasons why people get plaque. You have to kind of manage all of those reasons. And like I said, just because you have high cholesterol doesn't mean you need to be put on a statin,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, all of these factors and being able to deep dive and do more comprehensive tests are now available, right? So if you're wondering, okay, so my cholesterol, these are my numbers here, but what is the context they're existing in? Do I have high levels of inflammation that could be interacting here? My metabolic health, do I have abnormal, management of my blood sugar? How does all this play together, right? And so our blood work, if we're getting something comprehensive, can really tell us a great story. Yeah. And now we've got this testing that you're talking about with clearly that you can actually get a look at what's going on inside and see from that perspective as well.
Yeah, exactly. Every single person listening to this podcast, I don't care if you're, maybe if you're 21 and over, if you're listening to this podcast, should go and get their blood work done, right? And look, we live in 2025. You should be able to ask your doctor for it. If they're not going to do it for you, either find a new doctor or just go and get it done yourself. It's not that expensive anymore to do this. Once you understand what your blood biomarkers are telling you, you can avoid heart attacks or any of these diseases, And so I put a guide on my website, actually, if you want to have people get a guide to their biomarkers, which ones they should ask for, what is the optimal range, and why it's important to get into optimal. And there's only like 15 of them. They're not a lot of them. You will dramatically affect the course of your longevity and your health span for sure. And every person should be doing this for themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just get a look at what's going on, instead of just wondering and questioning. And what I use, and I'm just going to share this with everybody, is a comprehensive panel. It's like over 100 biomarkers, hormone levels, immune system markers, inflammatory markers. The list goes on. And obviously the cholesterol panels and the other general stuff, but so much more expansive. And it feeds you back also a biological age.
Yes.
And so I got to see, which was pretty cool. I'm 8 years younger biologically than I am chronologically. And it's just using the most advanced technology to get this data all put together for you. And that's number one. Number two, also being able to keep an eye on your metabolic health with continuous glucose monitors as well. And so we both love Levels for that. And so that's the company that I've been working with when I'm getting my own blood work done. And if you want to check out Levels, go to levels.link/model, and you can get 2 months for free when you get their annual membership. And they just added in, they give you a free 20 marker blood test annually as part of your membership.
Amazing.
Right? And so, but I just did the add-on where I can get the even more expansive blood panel done. So they're really doing some cool stuff. Levels.link/model.
You know what I love about my Levels app too is you can take a picture of your food and it's pretty accurate about how much protein is in it, micronutrients. Like it's amazing. And like sometimes you go to a restaurant, you're like, there's no way it's going to recognize what that is. And it does.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, but so of course, with the technology is there to do that stuff.
Yeah. So the other thing I tell people is with their biomarkers too, is once you get your blood test done. So first of all, like you're super advanced and you have a lot of knowledge, obviously. Most people are really just kind of starting on down this path. But whatever blood markers you get done, now you can upload them to ChatGPT and it'll kind of tell you what to look at. Now, obviously, it's not going to give you any intervention, so you still want to talk to a doctor before you change anything or take medications. But I mean, the tools are all out there now for everyone to become the CEO of their own health, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's so important for people to start doing it now because we've outsourced our health to, who we thought was taking care of it and this is not a knock to all the primary care doctors out there, right? But primary care doctors are basically, you're outsourcing your entire health to this person that sees you once a year for 30 minutes. And
if that.
If that. And they're just trying to make sure you don't have a disease, Yeah. And there's so much more good information in those blood tests than people really realize.
Yeah. And also, again, some of these companies providing personalized plans for you based off your unique blood work is very special. This for me is the right use of technology.
Yes.
There's a lot going on with technology, obviously. And some stuff is, I'm conflicted about because I think it's really dumbing us down. But we can free up some capacity for ourselves to learn, right? When I'm thinking about dumbing ourselves down, I'm thinking about we don't have to remember stuff now. Remember phone numbers, whatever. What happens to that space in your brain if you're not using it proactively for, memory, right? That part of the brain is just going to basically, kind of just degrade.
Yeah.
And right now we have the opportunity to proactively utilize technology for our betterment.
Right.
But we got to be intentional about it.
Yeah.
And so we have access. One of those benefits is right now what everybody is doing who's a part of this conversation, they're proactively listening and learning to something to empower them, right? And you could use that same time and, I don't want to throw out any names, but you could be up into the, Kanye beef or whatever, you know what I mean? There's infinite stuff for you to be, concerning your attention with that's here today, gone today. Or you can study things that are more life affirming and sustainable. And none of us have ever had such close proximity. They get to learn from the person who is the number one longevity doctor, right? And then this is affirmed. Yeah. This award is given to you by your peers, and they get to learn from you. Oh no, all they got to do is push a button. That's priceless, man. Yeah, priceless.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, look, we live in an incredible age of information. The internet, artificial intelligence, podcasts, all of this information is all free for people now, right? And I think as using biomarkers as an example, right? Don't just get them and then, put them in ChatGPT and say, what do I do, right? Learn what they each mean, because once you learn what each one of those numbers means, like hemoglobin A1C, HSCRP, you start putting this model in your head of where you need to focus your attention, and you kind of gamify it for yourself too, right? You're watching your numbers get into the optimal range. And so I think that learning process is so empowering because now you actually know how the machine works, right? Your body works, and the learning is just so self-sustaining too, right? You just keep wanting to know more.
What do you feel is the most surprising thing for people as far as something that is impacting their longevity in a negative way that most people have no idea about?
I would say when you get your blood tests back, there's probably 3 things I see that people are always surprised about. Number 1 is their hemoglobin A1C. This is a 3-month average of their sugar. And most people have this in the range of suboptimal. And what I mean by suboptimal is that you want to optimize your blood test number. 5.2 or below to me is optimal. Most people are much closer to prediabetes or in prediabetes already, which is 5.7. The second thing is their testosterone level. Both men and women are always surprised. And it's mind-blowing to me how low testosterone levels are in the general population when I see blood tests right now. And third is their inflammation marker, HSCRP, highly sensitive C-reactive protein. Many people have this way over 2 or 3, actually. And so we see a lot of surprises there as well. Optimal for that number is as close to 0 as you can get it. And so I think those are my 3 biggest categories of surprises. Once you know what those numbers are, you can start making changes or going down a discovery path to see what's causing it.
Powerful. Yeah, there's to put it bluntly, an epidemic when it comes to testosterone. epidemic.
Yeah.
And of course, we know some of the culprits now is really affirmed in the data, just the environmental input of these kind of estrogenic compounds, right? Xenoestrogens. We're just swimming in this stuff.
Right.
And also it ties back. Testosterone is related to your hemoglobin A1C.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's going on with your blood sugar, aromatization, can be robbing, even if you're making the testosterone, it can be getting converted into estrogen.
Exactly.
Right. Like, and so all this stuff paints a picture and you can start to find out what the issue is. And I love that so much, man. And that's one of those things too, where being mindful of your blood sugar management and seeing that long term, it's kind of like your blood glucose right now is like a snapshot,
right?
Versus something that's more extended, maybe like a long-term movie. Like what would be a good analogy for a hemoglobin A1C?
Yeah.
Versus a snapshot.
Yeah, exactly. I think, because it's a 3-month average, it's giving you all of those habits added together over time, right? And so I guess a good analogy would be like, I don't know, watching the entire game versus just one inning. You know what I mean? Like you really, when you watch just one inning, you only see like what those specific players did during that one inning. But when you watch the whole game, you get a really good feeling of the entire team and how it's working together, all of it. And so, yeah, but you also want to look at the snapshots too, right? Because the other important marker is fasting insulin level. So this is the first thing that changes when you start developing metabolic disease. Fasting insulin is the first detection of it. It's not fasting glucose, it's fasting insulin. Hemoglobin A1C changes after things are already broken, actually. So hemoglobin A1C is telling you like, things are really not going well for the last 3 months, like really not going well. And so another marker I talk about a lot is fasting insulin level. Yeah.
What's so crazy is like, we're just now getting that as part of the conversation.
Yeah.
When this was a part of it the whole time.
I know.
The whole time.
Yeah. And we've been able to check these markers now for decades, but no one talked about them,
And the average panel wasn't looking at that.
Yeah, no. I mean, a lot of these, markers, you can't even, if you ask your doctor to say, if you ask your doctor, I want a blood panel done, they wouldn't even check these things. They would check what's called the CBC, a complete blood count, or a chemistry profile, okay? All of that stuff if that stuff is in the red range or the bad range, like you have a bad problem already. A lot of people are not checking hemoglobin A1C, HSCRP, all these things are not normally being checked. So you have to ask for them. So on my website, drshah.com/biomarkers, there's a list of all the biomarkers. You just take it to your doctor and say, I want these.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What a great resource. Now, something that can affect all of these biomarkers that we've talked about that is kind of insidious and even hidden in a way is stress.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to talk about the connection with stress and our lifespan.
Yeah. So for me, stress is really something that we really need to kind of understand. How is your mental stress affecting you physiologically, right? And so the whole concept of de-stressing, I think it's something that we spend way too much attention on because it's hard. We live in a very stressful environment. Obviously, we want to reduce the amount of time that we're exposed to stress. And the one main reason for that is because psychological stress can turn into physiological stress by the secretion of cortisol from your adrenal glands, right? And we know that if you have high levels of cortisol for long periods of time, it can lead to metabolic disease, it can lead to inflammation, all these problems. So when does psychological stress lead to cortisol release? It's after about 20 to 30 minutes, right? And so if whatever you're doing that's stressful, you're having a stressful conversation, you are, you're on your computer banging away trying to do something and you're not in a flow state and it's stressful. If you could just break up those periods of time into 30-minute chunks, and take a little break and kind of let your cortisol reset, you can really mitigate the negative physiological consequences of stress, right? And so what do I do with that one? The hack there is I have an egg timer on my desk and I just put it to 30 minutes, and every 30 minutes I get up and I do something different. I'll either I'll do a little walk around the office, or I'll do some jumping jacks, or I have some weights by my desk, and so I'll lift some weights. And if you can break up that stress, it'll be extremely helpful.
Oh, man, I love that. That's one of the greatest metabolizers of stress are relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But they can also, on the other side, be one of the greatest contributors to our stress.
Yeah.
And so it's not an accident that you proactively engage in healthy relationships and get people together. Yeah. And that's one of the experiences that we had recently. There was a time before last that I saw you. We came to hang out at your house. Yeah. And you invited over this amazing group of people. Yeah. It was myself, my wife, Dr. Kelly Starrett, Juliet Starrett, Dr. Casey Means was there with her husband. Yeah. And it was also Rob was there, who's big in the health and wellness space, as far as like a background kind of producer guy. And also your amazing wife was there. And we just had this incredible experience. And it was something that was called a Jeffersonian dinner.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So Thomas Jefferson, he couldn't hear very well out of one ear. So he was kind of deaf in one ear. And his other ear was not that good either. And so when he would have people over, he made sure that only one person talked at a time. And so he would then ask a question and only one person could answer the question at a time. And then he would, if two people were talking or having a side conversation, he would take his ear and just kind of pull it forward and stop the whole conversation to get it back into one person talking at a time. And it's so powerful when you can do that, right? Because everyone's attention is focused on one person, and that person gets to say something deep about what they want to talk about. Like we ask some questions going around the table, like what are you most excited about coming up in your life? How have you contributed to the conversation on longevity and health? And people really think about what they want to answer. And so it's not just a random conversation. It's very thoughtful, and everyone puts their attention on one person. I love doing that. I do that on almost every single dinner now.
Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible experience for sure, to say the least. And also, the cherry on top was, I had no idea that this was going to happen. The dessert that was served you blew me away, man. It was from my cookbook, the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook. And it just was just like, are you kidding me, man? It's so awesome. Because I didn't know it at first. And I took a bite. I was like, this tastes so familiar, and the presentation, the energy, the people as well. Why was this something that you chose to do as far as like investing in relationships and getting people together like this?
It's a rock in my life. I know that I am the happiest and I am the least stressed and I have the best health when I am surrounded by people that are smart, that I have like a genuine love for, like I want to be around them. And I have great conversations that are meaningful and deep, and like to me, like if I go more than a couple of weeks without something like that, like I do get depressed, and so this is how I stay happy and I just stay vibrant in my own mind, is having these kind of conversations.
Yeah. We need each other, even the most introverted among us.
Yes,
we need each other. We evolved in community. And today we know, and this was just actually published as of this recording, just very recently, looking at one of the biggest contributing agents, one of these, again, seemingly invisible issues to early death. And it was on social isolation and loneliness. And so this was a data set of over 2 million people. Yeah. And it was a longitudinal study. So they're tracking them. This might be 6 months or even up to 25 years. And they found that people who felt lonely frequently, chronically lonely, had a 14% increase in mortality, right? So premature death from all causes. But social isolation was more than twice that. So we're talking about somewhere around 35% increased risk of early death when people are socially isolated. So the distinction is, even if you could feel lonely around other people, but being around other people is still preventative. It's still nourishing. You're still getting these inputs.
Yes.
And some of these inputs are, again, most of them, they're invisible.
Right.
This change in our chemistry being around each other is something that we can't see, but we feel it, right? We have an increase in oxytocin. We have a decrease in cortisol. Again, if it's people that you connect with and resonate with. We're also doing microbial data sharing. Yeah. Right. Our immune systems get a little light workout, a little lift up, being around each other. What happens when you're not around other people? You're not getting these inputs that you vitally need. And this is something for us to be more intentional about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so well said. And I think, if you look at like all the pillars of health, right? Some of them are obvious. Some of them are not so obvious. And, this is one of them that's not so obvious is social isolation. And community is a major pillar of health that it's easy to forget because, there's not hunger telling you that you need to, when you're hungry, you need to eat something, right? When you're tired, you need to sleep. But for this particular one, there's nothing there telling you, like, I need to get out there and like be around other people more, so
and
got to remember it.
You're one of those people, and generally, we all know somebody who's like a great connector of people. You put people together. You don't even know how much I love Kelly Starrett and Juliet. You don't even know.
Oh,
all right.
Really?
And it just so happened we were all invited together, on the same date. And like Juliet is one of those people that checks in on me. Like it'll be like a random Tuesday, and she'll be like, "Hey, Shawn, good morning. Just wanted to say I was thinking about you, sending you lots of love." That kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Right. And not to mention Casey Means, like we've, we're just like tight,
Yeah.
And so just being able to get together this group of people that are so cohesive.
Yeah.
And it's just very special, man. It's so valuable. And my wife and I were just on a high.
Oh, I love it.
Leaving there, and it lasts. It kind of like stays on you.
Yeah.
For, days after.
It does. Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm very grateful for that.
And I didn't even know you guys all knew each other. I was like,
right. That's what I'm saying.
I was like, these are all great people. They're really smart. We're all in the health and wellness conversation. Yeah. Let's get together, And so, everyone kind of recognized everybody for the most part in some way or the other.
Yeah. It's
so
awesome, man.
Yeah.
So with that,
can't wait to do it again.
I know, like yesterday, man, we got to get together. Yes. But, with this being said, this is one metabolizer of stress. You mentioned essentially just walking away, breaking up that monotony of like being on your screen, working or whatever the case might be because of that buildup of stress.
Right.
So is there anything else? You said something along the lines of, not really even believing in this like de-stressing paradigm. Mm-hmm. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is no one's going to live a life with no stress. No one's going to have a day with no stress. There's a scale that you can, go online, take a test. It's called the stress inventory score. There's a lot of like things that are pretty positive on there too. Like I'm getting married. I'm in a new relationship, but these are all still contributors of stress, right? Even though they're positive stress, if you don't kind of understand that stress is always going to be around us all the time, it's hard to like make any progress because you're not focusing on what is the treatment for that. And the treatment for that is breaking up the stress into smaller chunks, especially if it's work-related or conversationally related. The treatment is doing things like what you're talking about, being social more often. It's also like taking a vacation. Like, I think there's a statistic 70% of Americans don't even take all their PTO days. It's crazy to me,
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like having time for self-care. Like you have to intentionally build in these routines into your life. Otherwise, the consequences will add up into, negative physiological consequences, not just through cortisol, but also through things like drinking, being sedentary. Stress makes that happen too.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. We're not going to find some bubble that we can exist in without stress.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it's arming ourselves and understanding the situation we're dealing with. And there are simple things that we can do.
Right.
There's simple things we can do.
Simple things, right.
I got to ask you about this since I have you here. Earlier, I mentioned microbial file sharing. Mm-hmm. And so right now we know that there is a huge connection between gut health, microbiome, and longevity. Mm-hmm. And again, having you here, I get to hear it from the guy. So what's going on with gut health and longevity? Like, what is this association? And what are some things that we can do to fortify the health of our microbiome so that we could fortify our lifespan?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so right now, we're still at the very beginning of our knowledge on this. We know there's a connection between our gut health and pretty much every other system in our body, whether it be your brain, your heart, obviously your liver, et cetera. There's definitely a connection there. And by gut health, I mean the status of your microbiome, right? We don't know exactly what microbials, other than a few of them that we are focused on, really make a big difference. We just know that you need to have diversity, and there's certain keystone microbials that you need to have in your gut that will promote health in the long term. Okay. We also know that our gut microbiome is extremely important for a few other factors. Number one is that it prevents you from becoming metabolically unhealthy. Number two, it acts as an additional barrier to toxins getting into our system. And also, number three, there's chemicals and communication molecules being made between our gut and every other system in our body that if you don't have good diversity or just really poor microbial populations, that communication is lost. GLP-1, everyone's talking about these now, is one of those communication molecules that our gut actually makes, okay? So, and without a healthy gut microbiome, we don't make a lot of GLP-1. That's why there's this obesity crisis, right? So what can you do is the second part of your question, like how do we keep our gut microbiome healthy? It's actually fairly simple. Number one, don't destroy your gut microbiome by ultra-processed food, pharmaceuticals like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or antibiotics. Obviously, if you're really sick, take an antibiotic, but don't take an antibiotic just because, you're kind of feeling maybe you're sick. And thirdly, alcohol can also wreak havoc on your gut microbiome if you drink it in excess as well. And other things such as, I mentioned ultra-processed food already, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So avoid those things. Once you do avoid those things, your gut will naturally become healthier. Okay. Now, there's a few additional things that you can do to keep your gut microbiome super healthy, and that is fiber intake is extremely important. Collagen intake is also extremely important. And so you need a varied diet, to keep your gut microbiome healthy. There's some probiotics that I think that are useful as well. There's this one called Akkermansia, which is a keystone bacteria that helps us make GLP-1. That's very helpful. And that's kind of a good starting point right there.
Awesome. Awesome. So you mentioned diversity as being one of those hallmarks.
Yes.
And we see in our modern society that our diversity of microbial species is significantly less than folks who are living more of what we would consider like a kind of more indigenous experience, hunter-gatherer, adjacent individuals that are being studied today. They can have 4 to even 10 times more diversity.
Absolutely.
So we have a lot of species of microbes in our culture, in our own bodies that are going extinct or they're on the endangered species list.
Yeah.
And so getting them back up to par is focusing on increasing diversity. So how do we do that? Is that maybe by increasing the diversity of what we're eating?
Yeah, absolutely. This is increasing the diversity of what you're eating, eating the rainbow, having more fiber in your diet is also extremely important, but that's exactly how you do it. Increase the diversity of what you're eating.
Got it. Yeah. Fiber and fiber types.
Yeah, and fiber types. Yeah.
So, okay. So what do we want to do as far as, is there like maybe something for us to strive for, each week, maybe, I don't know, 20 different plant inputs?
I think that's a good place to start. I mean, there's some books that write about 100 different plants per week. I'm like, there's no way I can even find 100 different plants. And start eating the flowers.
Right, blend the flowers up.
Yeah, but I think definitely, at least 10 to 20 different plants per week is a good idea as far as diversity goes. But look, the reality is it's hard to kind of do that, right? So I just think just having a thought in your brain that every plate of food you eat should have some vegetables in it, and maybe it's definitely like trying to diversify the types of vegetables throughout the week is also a good idea as well.
Yeah. I just did that yesterday, actually, because you can get into a rhythm or a rut.
Yes.
Eating the same things again and again and again.
Right.
Especially, I think a lot of people do this a lot for breakfast. Like they have the same thing again. And it's an opportunity for some diversity, And so actually, my wife made the night before a recipe from the Eat Smarter Family Cookbook. And this bowl includes things like quinoa and arugula and this phenomenal dressing we've been making for, I don't know, maybe 15 years. It's my favorite dressing. And just all these, even the dressing itself and making the dressing, which is super easy to make yourself, has like fresh basil and all these different spices. And so being able to get this input in cucumber, tomatoes, all these things that you normally wouldn't see in a conventional breakfast.
Yeah.
Right. Because I didn't have it the night before because I eaten a little bit earlier. I was, on the run, but I was like, I'm going to have that tomorrow for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I got in this diversity of plants that I normally wouldn't do in that breakfast meal.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I think, one way to kind of put more diversity into your food choices is to buy a good recipe book like yours, and once you start experimenting with different recipes, you're going to naturally buy something you've never bought before, and put into your food the next day.
What are you most excited about right now?
What am I most excited about right now? Well, we're kind of on a rocket ship with Next Health, my clinical practice of, I call it health optimization and longevity medicine. We're opening 3 locations next month. We're opening probably 30 locations in the next 365 days. And we're going to be the biggest practice of clinical longevity medicine in the world by, in a year. And I'm super excited about it. And when I say biggest practice, I mean, we have 4-wall clinics that people can go to and use these technologies, meet with a medical practitioner, get their blood test done, and we put it all together for people under those 4 pillars. And so I really feel like we're creating a new system of healthcare. Our previous healthcare system was really just sick care. We want to create a new parallel system that is true healthcare, that it keeps you healthy, keeps you vibrant, keeps you functional for as long as possible. And I think that's the definition of longevity. That when you asked earlier in the podcast, the first thing you asked me, that I really feel like having a place to go where you can experience those 4 verticals is what we're trying to create.
Yes.
Yeah,
and you're
so
doing
I'm super
it,
excited
man.
about it.
You're doing it. It's awesome. It is so awesome and inspiring. Can you let people know where they can find a clinic and also just where they can connect with you and get more information?
Yeah. So if you go to next-health.com, there's a list of all of our clinics and where we're coming. Right now, we're LA, we're New York, we are going to be in Newport Beach, Chicago, we're in Nashville as well, Montecito, Santa Barbara area, but we're going to be everywhere in the next few months. And so they can find the clinics on the website. I'm at drshah.com is my website for me personally. And I also have an Instagram presence, of course, at Darshan Shah, MD.
And you also have an amazing podcast.
Yeah. That,
by the way.
Thanks to you, when you interviewed me, you kind of gave me the push to make it happen, and I did.
You did. And this is the thing about you, and I share this with you. Certain people like yourself, if you give them, this kind of nudge to do this particular thing, you don't just do it, you do it exceedingly well. Like I'm talking top tier out of the gate because of the person that you are, the knowledge that you have, the warmness that you have as well, but also just knowing how to create a system around things, right? And having good people and just the studio setup and the placement and just like, it was all like, you've been doing this forever, basically right out of the gate. So it was super fun to even experience this and to see this.
Yeah.
And my first revelation that, it's out is actually, I came out of an interview that I was doing in West Hollywood and I see this gigantic billboard for your show. I was like, I know that guy. And I took a picture. I text you. I was like, yo, the show is out. He was like, yeah, man. Yeah, man. So it's amazing. So people can find your show.
Yeah.
The Extend podcast. Where they're listening to this podcast.
Yeah. What we really try to do is, there's a lot of medical information out there. My whole goal with the podcast is to make it so that people understand it, and it's easy for people to have take home value. And that's another thing I got from you. Like I always learn something that I'm going to do after I listen to an episode. And so that's the whole goal. And yeah, Extend is the name of the podcast. We're on episode 65 already, which is amazing. And thank you for coming on the show. It was awesome. Yeah, every year we got to do this.
Yes, for sure. For sure. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
The chemicals that make up the ink in receipts are known to be endocrine disrupting chemicals. But the takeaway here isn't like be petrified of everything, right?
Get that receipt away from me.
Don't touch the receipt, right? Like we're talking about day to day, like what are the cumulative mountain of exposures that we're having?